She secretly raised their son after her billionaire Senator X accused her of being a gold digger. Rain hammered against hundreds of black umbrellas, each droplet exploding into smaller fragments before sliding down the curved surfaces. The press conference steps of the Whitmore Hotel gleamed under harsh television. Lights, their wet marble reflecting the chaos of reporters jostling for position. Camera operators steadied their equipment against the November wind while photographers crouched low, seeking the perfect angle through gaps in the crowd. Senator William Macbeth emerged from the hotel's brass doors at exactly 3 o'clock. His grey suit darkened immediately where rain found its way past his abandoned umbrella. An aide rushed forward with protection, but Macbeth waved him off. His tie hung loose against his white shirt, the knot pulled down to the third button. The prepared remarks his communications director had spent 12 hours crafting remained folded in his jacket pocket. He gripped the podium's edges until his knuckles whitened. The microphones clustered before him like metal flowers, each bearing the logo of a different news outlet. CNN, Fox, NBC, local stations from 3 states. They all waited. Behind the cameras, reporters clutched phones and tablets, their social media feeds already buzzing with speculation about this hastily called conference. Her name is Amelia Jacobs. The words cut through the rain's percussion. Every journalist leaned forward. Macbeth's voice carried none of his usual political polish, no trace of the smooth delivery that had won him 3 consecutive terms. Our son's name is Arlo. The statement landed like thunder. Reporters who had covered Macbeth for decades exchanged glances. His wife of 22 years, Victoria, had given him 2 daughters. This revelation pointed to something else entirely, something that would rewrite every profile ever written. About the family values conservative who had built his career on traditional marriage advocacy. I was wrong. These 2 words stripped away years of carefully constructed image. The senator who had once filibustered for 14 hours against a childcare reform bill, who had given countless speeches about the sanctity of marriage, who had positioned himself as the moral compass of his party, that man stood drenched before them, admitting to an affair and a hidden child. I am sorry. The assembled crowd inhaled collectively, a sound audible even above the weather. Flashbulbs erupted in waves, creating a strobe effect that turned the scene into disconnected moments. Macbeth's jaw clenched, his eyes focused somewhere beyond the cameras, water running down his face in streams that might have been rain or might have been something else. 400 miles north, in a cedar-shingled house overlooking Maple Harbor's quiet bay, a phone screen illuminated on a kitchen counter. The CNN alert appeared first, followed immediately by notifications from every major news outlet. The woman preparing dinner, slicing carrots with practiced precision, glanced at the screen. Her knife paused mid-cut. Amelia Jacobs, 34 years old, owner of the town's only bookstore, single mother to a brilliant 8-year-old boy who had his father's sharp chin and her green eyes, read her name in a headline for the first time. She set the knife down carefully, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and turned the phone face down against the butcher block counter. Through the window, she could see Arlo in the backyard, building something elaborate with branches and rope. Another one of his engineering projects that would soon fill their garage. He worked with total concentration, unaware that his carefully protected world had just shifted on its axis. The anonymity she had fought to preserve, the normal childhood she had crafted for him through years of silence and geographic distance. The promise Macbeth had made to stay away until Arlo turned 18, all of it had just evaporated in front of network cameras. She had kept this secret not out of shame, but out of necessity. When she discovered her pregnancy 9 years ago, Macbeth had been a rising star, already married, already father to young daughters. The affair had been brief, 6 weeks of stolen moments, while she worked on his first senatorial campaign. When she told him about the pregnancy, he had offered 2 choices: termination, with his full support, or her silence with his financial assistance. She had chosen a third option, complete independence in exchange for his absence. The agreement had been simple: no money, no contact, no acknowledgement. She would raise Arlo alone, and Macbeth would maintain his political trajectory unburdened by scandal. For 8 years it had worked. She built a life in Maple Harbour, a town small enough that everyone knew everyone but large. Enough that a single mother with a vague story about a deceased partner raised no eyebrows. Arlo grew up surrounded by books and boats, science camps and soccer practice, birthday, parties and parent-teacher conferences where Amelia sat alone but never felt isolated. Now, watching her son test the weight-bearing capacity of his branch structure. She understood that tomorrow would bring reporters to their door. Tomorrow would bring questions Arlo wasn't prepared to hear. Tomorrow would bring cameras and scrutiny, and the end of their quiet existence. The phone buzzed against the counter, vibrating with incoming calls she wouldn't answer. Her mother in Arizona, probably. Her best friend, Kate, definitely. Maybe even reporters who had somehow already traced her name to this address. But definitely not him. Macbeth had made his confession without warning her. Without giving her time to prepare or relocate, or even tell Arlo herself. The trust between them, fragile as it had been, built on mutual benefit, rather than affection, had survived 8 years of distance. It had survived his rise to prominence, his presidential campaign considerations, his increasingly conservative platform that stood against everything about their son's existence. But could it survive this? His decision to drag them into the light without consent, his choice to make their private arrangement a public spectacle. Through the rain that had just begun to fall on Maple Harbour, matching the weather at Macbeth's press conference. Through pure coincidence, Amelia watched her son abandon his construction project and run toward the house. His sneakers splashed through puddles, his hair plastered to his head within seconds. He burst through the back door with the energy only 8-year-olds possess, dripping onto the kitchen floor. "Mom, it's raining. Can we watch a movie?" She looked at him, really looked at him. The boy who didn't know his father's name, who had never asked hard questions about why. He only had one parent, who trusted her completely to keep his world safe and stable. "Sure, buddy. Go get changed. I'll make popcorn." As Arlo thundered upstairs, Amelia picked up her phone and turned it to silent. 37 missed calls, 89 text messages, the first wave of what would become a tsunami. She opened her laptop instead, typing quickly into a search bar, "How to protect a minor child from media attention." The results filled her screen: legal precedents, privacy laws, practical advice from other parents who had been thrust into unwanted spotlights. The question that pressed against her thoughts wasn't whether she could forgive Macbeth for breaking their agreement. That answer was simple: she couldn't. The question was whether she could protect Arlo from the consequences of his father's confession while the entire country watched. Could she maintain his innocence when his name would be trending on social media by morning? Could she preserve any semblance of normal when their photograph would be on every news site within hours? The popcorn maker whirred to life, its familiar sound a small comfort in a kitchen that suddenly felt exposed, as if the walls had become transparent. Outside, the rain intensified, and somewhere in Washington, Senator Macbeth was probably being ushered into a car, away from the cameras, but not from the consequences of his revelation. The truth he had spoken would ripple outward, reaching every corner of their carefully separated lives, binding them together in a way their brief affair never had. Trust and truth, she had thought they were the same thing. Now she understood they could be weapons against each other. That public truth could destroy private trust. That protection sometimes required deception. The secret she had kept to keep her son safe had just been named out loud, and tomorrow everyone would know their names. 6 months before Senator Macbeth would stand in the rain confessing to the world, dawn broke gently over a different life. In a Georgetown townhouse, sunlight filtered through gauze curtains, painting golden, stripes across a kitchen where 2 people moved in comfortable synchronization. Amelia reached for coffee filters, while William ground beans, Ethiopian single origin, her favorite. Their mug sat waiting on the counter, his pristine white with the Senate seal, hers. Chipped ceramic painted with wildflowers, a thrift store find she refused to replace. Almond croissant or plain? William held up a white bakery box, already knowing her answer. Both, split down the middle. She smiled, pouring water into the coffee maker. You know, I can't choose. This was their Thursday morning ritual. His wife, Victoria, believed he attended early prayer breakfasts with conservative donors. Instead, he drove 40 minutes through pre-dawn streets to this townhouse Amelia rented under her maiden name. Here, they existed in a bubble where his political life couldn't reach, where they could. Spread maps across the breakfast table and plan impossible trips they'd never take. New Zealand. In February, Amelia traced the coastline with her finger. We could kayak through those caves that light up, the glowworm ones. William leaned over her shoulder, his cologne mixing with the coffee's aroma. I read about those, completely silent except for water drops. They both knew February would bring campaign season. They both knew these maps were fiction, but Thursday mornings allowed for dreaming, for pretending they were different people with different choices. He wasn't Senator William Macbeth, married father of two, conservative cornerstone being groomed for higher office. She wasn't the campaign strategist who had fallen for a client, who had left politics entirely rather than watch him with his wife at fundraisers. The coffee maker gurgled its completion. Amelia poured 2 cups, adding cream to hers, leaving his black. 4 sugars for him. A sweet tooth he hid from voters who expected their moral leaders to practice restraint in all things. She stirred his cup counterclockwise, 3 rotations exactly, another ritual born from 6 months of Thursdays. The Johnson interview airs tonight, William said, checking his phone. They're focusing on family values, traditional marriage, the usual talking points. Amelia nodded, understanding the subtext. These interviews were why they met only on Thursdays, why she had moved from her visible apartment near DuPont Circle to this anonymous townhouse, why their relationship existed in carefully controlled spaces. His political rise demanded perfection, or at least its appearance. His phone buzzed against the counter, then again, then continuously. Turn it off, Amelia suggested, but William was already scrolling, his expression shifting from annoyance to concern to something harder to read. There's a photo, he said slowly. Someone sent it to Kiteframe. Kiteframe, the political gossip site that had destroyed 3 careers in the past year alone. Amelia set down her mug carefully, coffee sloshing against the rim. William turned the screen toward her. The image was grainy, clearly taken from a distance with a zoom lens. It showed Amelia leaving a pawn shop in Arlington, carrying a small bag. The timestamp was read 2 days ago, Tuesday 2:47 p.m. You went to a pawn shop? His voice carried a tone she'd never heard before, not anger exactly, but distance, calculation. My grandmother's bracelet, Amelia explained. The clasp broke. They have a jeweler who... A pawn shop. He repeated the words like they were foreign. Kiteframe's subject line says, Senator's secret meeting ground. They're suggesting you were selling something. The kitchen's warmth suddenly felt oppressive. Amelia watched William's face, saw him processing scenarios, calculating damage. This was the expression he wore in committee hearings, when opposition senators tried to corner him. She had become a problem requiring management. You think I'm selling jewelry? She kept her voice level. Why would I need to sell anything? The question hung between them. In 6 months, William had never offered financial support, and she had never asked. She paid her own rent, bought her own groceries, and maintained complete independence. It was part of what made their relationship feel balanced. She wanted nothing from him except Thursday mornings. The optics, William said, still staring at his phone. If this gets out, if they connect you to me, the story writes itself. Senator's mistress pawning gifts, desperate for money, maybe selling information. Mistress, the word stung more than it should have. They had never defined what they were, but that term felt cold, transactional. Is that what I am? William didn't answer immediately. His thumb scrolled through his phone, probably reading responses from his chief of staff, his communications director, the machinery that protected his image. I need you to tell me exactly what you were doing there, he said finally. I need receipts. Proof that you were getting something repaired. Proof? Amelia stepped back. You need proof that I'm not, what, selling secrets to tabloids? Pawning gifts you've never given me? That's not what I... Then what? What exactly do you think I was doing? William set down his phone, but his hand remained near it, ready. I think you don't understand how this works. One photo, one suggestion, and everything I've built. Everything you've built. Amelia heard her voice crack. What about what we've built? These mornings, these conversations, this trust. Trust doesn't matter if the story is better than the truth. You worked in politics. You know this. She had known it once. She had crafted narratives, shaped perceptions, understood how easily reality could be overwritten by compelling fiction. But she had left that world, chosen authenticity over artifice. She had thought William came here for the same reason, to be himself without cameras, without calculation. I can't have questions about money, William continued, his tone shifting to what she recognized as his negotiation voice. My finance reform bill, my position on transparency, any suggestion of impropriety. You mean any suggestion that you're involved with someone who might need money? Amelia felt heat rise in her chest. Someone without a trust fund or a family fortune. That's not someone who rents instead of owns, who shops at thrift stores, who apparently can't be trusted near a pawn shop without suspicion. William stood, his movement sharp. You're twisting this. Am I? Then why do you need proof? Why is your first instinct to investigate me instead of trusting me? Because I can't afford to be wrong. The words came out harder than perhaps he intended. He softened his tone, reached for her hand. Amelia, please, just show me the receipt. Let me put this to rest before it becomes something. She pulled away. It's already something. You've already decided I'm capable of what? Selling our story? Blackmailing you? I haven't decided anything. Your request for proof says otherwise. William's phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't check it, but his eyes flicked toward it involuntarily. The outside world pressing in, demanding his attention, his response, his carefully managed reaction. I should go, he said. Victoria thinks I'm at a prayer breakfast. If I'm late... Of course. Amelia turned toward the window. We wouldn't want Victoria to suspect anything. She heard him gather his things, keys, wallet, the sound of his jacket being pulled from the chair. His footsteps paused at the kitchen doorway. We'll talk about this Thursday, he said, when we've both had time to think. No. He stopped. No, there won't be a Thursday. Not if you leave now, not without trusting me, not after asking for proof that I'm not exactly what you're afraid I am. Someone beneath your station trying to profit from your position. I never said that. You didn't have to. The silence stretched between them, filled with the coffee maker's cooling clicks and distant traffic sounds. Amelia kept her back to him, watching a cardinal land on the fence outside. The bird pecked at something, flew away, returned, flew away again. Indecision and constant motion. This is my career, William said finally. My family's reputation. My daughter's futures. I have to be careful, and I'm the risk you have to manage. In this climate, everyone is a risk. Amelia turned to face him then, memorizing his face, the grey threading through his temple, the lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled, though he wasn't smiling now. Then you should go. Manage your risks. William moved toward her, stopped, moved again, stopped again. His hand rose as if to touch her face, fell back to his side. Amelia. Go. He left with the careful control of a man trained never to slam doors. The townhouse settled into silence. Amelia stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the debris of their morning. 2 cups of coffee, growing cold, pastries split but uneaten, maps of places they would never visit together. She picked up her phone, scrolled to the photo of the pawn shop William had shown her. Such an ordinary image, a woman leaving a store, bag in hand, face turned away from the camera. But the ordinary could be weaponized. She understood that now. Their Thursday mornings had felt removed from his political world, but that world had been watching all along, waiting for ammunition. The bruise William left wasn't visible. It sat somewhere between her ribs, a precise pain that would spread through the following days. He had chosen suspicion over trust, reputation over relationship, the story strangers might tell over the truth she had lived. Amelia picked up her grandmother's bracelet from the counter, its repaired clasp gleaming. She had the receipt in her purse and could easily prove her innocence. But innocence that required proof wasn't innocence at all. It was a performance, and she was finished performing. She opened her laptop, began searching for jobs far from Washington. By noon, she had submitted 3 applications. By evening, she had found the listing in Maple Harbor, a bookstore for sale, a life, waiting to be built far from political calculations and Thursday morning fictions. She would leave the city without explanation, without forwarding address, without the dramatic confrontation that might generate headlines. She would disappear cleanly, surgically, the way careful people removed problems. But first, she had one more secret to protect, the pregnancy test hidden in her bathroom. Drawer, its 2 pink lines a truth that would transform everything if spoken aloud. This secret she would keep not from spite, but from necessity. A child deserved more than being raised as risk management, more than a father who demanded receipts before offering trust. The cardinal returned to the fence, pecking at the same spot, persistent in its small task. Amelia watched it work, understanding something about patience, about building alone, about the strength found in silence. When Thursday came, William would find the townhouse empty, her key under the mat, no forwarding address, no explanation beyond what he had already chosen to believe. He would craft his own narrative about why she left, probably convince himself she had been guilty of something after all. That story would be easier than admitting he had destroyed trust with his own hands and had chosen fear over faith. The accusation had been made without words, delivered in his request for proof, in his immediate suspicion, in his careful calculation of her worth against his risk. She had been measured and found wanting, not because of what she had done, but because of what she might represent to those watching from outside. 1 photo, 1,000 assumptions. The image that changed everything wasn't scandalous, just a woman leaving a store. But in the wrong hands, ordinary becomes evidence, and trust becomes the first casualty. Ever been misread by the person who should have known you best? That moment when someone you love looks at you and sees not who you are, but who they fear you might be. William's suspicion revealed more than doubt. It exposed the inequality that had always existed between them, the careful balance where she gave trust and he calculated risk. His fear detonated their relationship and set a secret in motion, one that would grow in silence, protected, by distance, until the day he would stand at a podium and speak names he never knew existed. Should Amelia have tried to explain or protected her peace? Comment below with your thoughts and subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories for more tales of love, betrayal, and the secrets that shape our lives. The pregnancy test balanced on the edge of the bathroom sink, its 2 pink lines sharp against white plastic. Amelia sat on the closed toilet lid, still wearing the same clothes from that final Thursday morning 3 weeks ago. Outside her Georgetown townhouse, moving trucks idled at the curb. Everything she owned filled exactly half the vehicle. Books, mismatched dishes, the maps they'd spread across the kitchen table, now rolled and rubber-banded. She picked up the test again, as if multiple viewings might change its message. The timing felt deliberately cruel, discovering new life just as she'd decided to disappear from her old one. Her phone sat silent on the counter. 23 missed calls from William over the past weeks, voicemails she'd deleted unheard. He didn't know about the pregnancy. He never would. The letter she'd written him went through 7 drafts before she tore them all into confetti. What words could explain that his suspicion had broken something fundamental, that his request for proof had revealed the inequality he'd never acknowledged, that she'd rather raise a child alone than watch that child grow up measured against political calculations? No letter, then. Silence would be her response, not cruel, but clean, a surgical removal of herself from his life, leaving no loose threads for journalists to pull. The drive to Maple Harbor took 11 hours. Amelia stopped only for gas and bathroom breaks, eating crackers to settle her stomach, drinking water carefully rationed. With each mile north, Washington's weight lifted. The highways narrowed. Glass towers gave way to pine forests. Population signs counted down, 50,000, 20,000, 8,000. Finally, Maple Harbour's modest 3,847. She'd bought the bookstore sight unseen, negotiating via email with the elderly owner who wanted someone to keep the stories alive. The apartment above it came furnished, a bed, a couch, a kitchen table scarred by decades of use. Perfect for someone starting over, or starting entirely. Juniper and Rye, the coffee shop next door, became her first routine. Every morning at 7, she'd order decaf coffee, though the barista didn't need to know why, and a blueberry scone. The owner, Marcus, had gentle eyes and never asked personal questions beyond, "How's the bookstore coming along?" Slowly, Amelia would answer, though in truth she was transforming the space rapidly. She alphabetized fiction, created reading nooks with second-hand armchairs, established a children's section with cushions shaped like lily pads. The work kept her hands busy while her mind processed the growing reality inside her. Library afternoons followed. Maple Harbour's library occupied a Victorian house converted in the 1960s, its rooms still bearing original wallpaper. Amelia volunteered to reorganize their local history section, finding comfort in other people's documented lives. Birth records, marriage certificates, obituaries, all the official markers of existence. Her own story would leave no such trail here. She'd arrived as Amelia Jacobs, no maiden name restored, no questions about the father she'd never name. Back porch stories became her evening ritual, not a place but a local radio program. Every night at 8, a woman named Eleanor read short fiction over the airwaves. Amelia would sit by her apartment window, watching the harbour lights reflect on black water, listening to other people's invented worlds while her own real one grew more complex. The first ultrasound happened at Maple Harbour General, a hospital, small enough that the maternity ward shared space with pediatrics. The technician, a cheerful woman named Dolores, spread gel across Amelia's stomach without asking about the father's absence. "Strong heartbeat," Dolores announced, turning the screen. "Want to know the gender?" "Yes. Boy. Definitely a boy. See that?" Amelia saw only static that somehow contained her son. The word landed strangely. Son. She had a son. I would have a son. Was growing a son while building a life that would contain them both. That night, she painted the second bedroom pale yellow. Not blue, nothing. That would invite questions about expectations or traditions. She assembled a crib alone, cursing at instructions clearly written for 2 people. Managing. Eventually, through determination and creative use of furniture as temporary supports. Arlo arrived on a February morning during a snowstorm that closed roads for 3 days. The delivery was uncomplicated. 10 hours of labor, no emergencies, just Amelia, and the overnight nursing staff who coached her through contractions. When they placed him on her chest, his weight felt both insignificant and enormous. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of absolute dependency. Father's name for the birth certificate? The administrator held a clipboard, pen ready. "Deceased," Amelia said, the lie coming easily. Before he knew about the pregnancy, "I'm sorry for your loss," Amelia nodded, accepting condolences for a death that was more metaphorical than physical. William Macbeth, the man who'd traced maps with his finger and taken his coffee with 4 sugars, had died the moment he'd asked for proof. Senator Macbeth continued living, but he wasn't Arlo's father. Arlo had no father, only a mother who'd chosen protection over truth. The early months blurred together, feeding schedules, diaper changes, the bookstore temporarily, managed by Marcus's teenage daughter, while Amelia learned the rhythm of new motherhood. Arlo was bright from the beginning, his eyes tracking movement, his hands grasping with unusual determination. He walked at 10 months, spoke in sentences by 18 months, built elaborate block structures by age 2. Privacy became both shelter and weight. When customers asked about Arlo's father, Amelia had her story ready. A brief relationship, a car accident, too painful to discuss. The fiction protected them from harder questions, from connections someone might eventually make. but it also isolated them in a specific way. She couldn't share birth stories with other mothers without lying, couldn't complain about parenting because she'd chosen single motherhood, couldn't explain why certain news segments made her change the channel. William appeared on television occasionally, campaign speeches, Senate hearings, presidential speculation. His hair had gone grayer, his jaw sharper. His eyes looked different, though Amelia couldn't define how. Emptier, perhaps, or maybe she was projecting, seeing absence where others saw gravitas. "Who's that?" Arlo asked once, age 4, pointing at the screen where William stood behind a podium. "Just a politician," Amelia answered, lowering the volume with the remote. "What's a politician?" "Someone who talks for a living." "That sounds boring." "Very boring," she agreed, switching to cartoons. These moments came irregularly, but inevitably. William's face on a magazine cover at the grocery store, his voice on the radio during morning drives, his name in conversations between customers who didn't know they were discussing her son's father. Each time, Amelia felt the secret pulse like a living thing, demanding attention she refused to give. Arlo grew without knowing what he lacked. He had Marcus, teaching him to steam milk at the coffee shop. Eleanor from the radio program, reading him stories in person every Sunday. The harbour itself served as a kind of parent, teaching him about tides and seasons, patience and power. He didn't ask why other children had 2 parents. Maple Harbour had enough single-parent households that his situation wasn't unusual. Still, Amelia watched for signs of William in him. The way Arlo tilted his head when thinking matched his father's gesture exactly. His laugh came from somewhere else, louder than either parent's, totally uninhibited. His love of building, of creating elaborate structures from simple materials, seemed entirely his own. She documented everything in journals Arlo would someday read, though she hadn't decided what truths those pages would contain. On Arlo's 5th birthday, Amelia considered contact. William deserved to know he had a son, perhaps. Arlo deserved a father, potentially. But then she remembered that morning in Georgetown, the suspicion in William's eyes. His immediate assumption that she was something to be managed rather than trusted. That man didn't deserve Arlo. More importantly, Arlo didn't deserve to be anyone's risk calculation. The bookstore thrived. Arlo started kindergarten. Life developed its own momentum, separate from the world she'd left behind. Sometimes weeks passed without thinking of William at all. Other times, she'd see Arlo's profile in a certain light and feel the secret's weight pressing against her ribs. She built them a sturdy, quiet life. Morning routines that didn't require negotiation. Bedtime stories chosen without political consideration. Weekends exploring tide pools and forest trails. Teaching Arlo to identify birds and constellations, to love learning without agenda. The privacy that protected them also shaped them, mother and son, against a world that didn't know their full story. One evening, as November rain began what would become the storm during William's confession, Amelia tucked Arlo into bed. He was 8 now, all knobby knees and questions about everything, building a fort from branches in the backyard. "Tell me about before I was born," he requested. "A new favorite bedtime story. Before you were born, I lived in a different city. I had a different job. I wasn't nearly as happy." "Why not?" "Because I didn't have you." This was the complete truth, if not the complete story. Arlo accepted it, as children do when love feels larger than logic. He fell asleep holding his stuffed octopus, unaware that 3,000 miles away, his father was drafting a speech that would change everything. Amelia stood in his doorway, watching him sleep. The secret she'd chosen, silence over scandal, protection over revelation, had given him this, a childhood without cameras, an identity without asterisks, a life where he was just Arlo, not Senator Macbeth's illegitimate son. Tomorrow, that will end. But tonight, she watched him dream, grateful for the years of peace her silence had purchased, even as she prepared for the storm that would arrive in the morning. Rain streaked the windows of Harborview Pediatric Respiratory Clinic, the same relentless precipitation that had marked William's confession 2 days earlier. Amelia held Arlo's inhaler in her lap, watching him build towers with waiting room blocks while they waited for his quarterly appointment. The asthma had developed last year, manageable but requiring vigilance, especially during weather changes. "Mom, look, I made it earthquake-proof." Arlo demonstrated his engineering by shaking the small table. His structure held. "Brilliant design," a voice said from the entrance. Amelia's hand tightened on the inhaler. William stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, no security detail visible. He looked older than on television, deeper lines, heavier shadows under his eyes. His confession had cost him politically. She'd heard snippets from customers discussing his probable resignation. Arlo glanced up at the stranger briefly, then returned to his blocks, adding another level. His concentration was absolute, unaware he was being studied by the father he'd never known existed. "Don't." Amelia's voice carried only far enough to reach William. "Not here. Not like this." William moved to the registration desk, speaking quietly with the receptionist. Whatever he said resulted in nodding, typing, a gesture toward the chairs across the room from Amelia. He sat precisely where indicated, his gaze returning repeatedly to Arlo despite visible efforts to look elsewhere. Time moved strangely. The clinic's fish tank bubbled. Other children came and went with their parents. Arlo continued building, occasionally asking Amelia engineering questions she answered as best she could. William remained frozen in his seat, watching his son exist in real space rather than headlines. "Arlo Jacobs?" A nurse called from the hallway. Amelia stood, helping Arlo gather his creation carefully. He insisted on showing the doctor his latest design. As they passed William, Arlo's laugh at something the nurse said made William close his eyes. The sound was pure joy, uninhibited in a way political children learn to suppress early. The appointment was routine, lung function normal, medication working, and continuing the current treatment plan. But Amelia's mind stayed in the waiting room, in William's presence that felt both inevitable and impossible. He'd found them so quickly, or perhaps he'd always known where they were, respecting her silence until his confession made contact necessary. When they emerged, William was gone, but the receptionist handed Amelia a folded paper. Inside, his handwriting, unchanged despite everything, Tanglewood Park. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Please." That night, after Arlo was asleep, Amelia sat at her kitchen table, staring at William's note. 8 years of silence broken by his public confession, now this request for private conversation. She could refuse, pack immediately, disappear again. But running would mean lying to Arlo about why they were leaving his home, his friends, his carefully constructed world. She texted the number William had included, 1 hour. No promises beyond that. His response came immediately, understood. "Thank you." Tanglewood Park occupied a peninsula jutting into the harbor, its playground surrounded by pine trees that muffled sound. Amelia arrived 15 minutes early, needing to choose their position. A bench with clear sightlines, escape routes planned. William appeared exactly at 10, alone, wearing jeans and a sweater she didn't recognize. Civilian clothes that made him look like any other father at a park. "Is he mine?" The question came without preamble, though his voice suggested he already knew. Yes. William's exhale was audible. He sat heavily on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance. "Why didn't you tell me? You'd already decided I was capable of selling you out for money. What would you have thought if I'd suddenly claimed pregnancy? That I was trapping you? Guaranteeing 18 years of blackmail? I was wrong." The admission came quickly, like something long rehearsed. "About the pawn shop. About you. About everything. It doesn't matter now. It's all that matters. I've destroyed my career, my marriage, my reputation. All of it was built on lies anyway. But Arlo, I've missed 8 years of his life because I was a suspicious fool." Amelia watched a seagull fight wind currents above the water. "He has asthma. I love building things. Reads at a 6th grade level. Hates carrots, but pretends to like them because he knows I worry about his nutrition. Sleeps with a stuffed octopus named Professor Legs." Each detail seemed to strike William physically. He hunched forward, elbows on knees, head in hands. "He's happy," Amelia continued. "He's kind. He shares his lunch with kids who forget theirs. He rescues worms from sidewalks after rain. He doesn't know he's missing anything because I've made sure he isn't. You've done it alone, all of it. I had help. This town raised him as much as I did. Marcus taught him about coffee and kindness. Eleanor gave him stories. The harbour itself taught him patience. But not his father. His father chose suspicion over trust. I chose protection over truth. William turned to face her fully. Rain had started again, light drops that would build to something heavier. What would it take? For what? For a chance to get to know him. Not as Senator Macbeth. That man is finished anyway. Just as William, as someone who wants to learn who his son is. Amelia had prepared for demands, legal threats, custody battles. This quiet request destabilized her. He doesn't know you exist. He thinks his father died before he was born. Then let me exist differently, as a friend first, someone who happens to like building things too. And when the media comes, when reporters trace you here, they already have. My security detail is keeping them at the town limits. I've hired a firm that specializes in protecting minors from media exposure. Arlo's name and image won't appear anywhere without your consent. He'd thought this through, prepared. The opposite of his impulsive confession that had started this collision. Ground rules, Amelia said. Non-negotiable. Anything. You show up when you say you will. Every time. No cancellations for political emergencies, because there won't be any. You're done with that world or you're done here. I already submitted my resignation. Effective end of month. You go slow. Let him lead. No forcing connection, no expensive gifts to buy affection, no sudden declarations of fatherhood. Understood. You respect my decisions. I've kept him safe and whole for 8 years. You don't get to override my judgment because biology gives you a claim. I wouldn't dare. And if he rejects you, if he's angry when he learns the truth, if he wants nothing to do with you, you accept it. You disappear again. William nodded, though something in his expression suggested that possibility would destroy him. Good. He should understand those stakes. There's something else, he said. Victoria and I are divorcing. It was coming anyway. We've been performing art for years. But the girls, they have a half-brother they've never known about. Eventually they'll want to meet him. Eventually it is not now. No, not now. They sat in silence, watching rain disturb the harbour's surface. A fishing boat motored past, its captain waving at shore from muscle memory. Normal life continues despite the negotiation reshaping two families. He builds things, William said suddenly. You mentioned that. What kinds of things? Everything. Forts from branches, robots from cardboard, entire cities from blocks. He sees engineering problems everywhere and needs to solve them. I wanted to be an architect once. Before law school, before politics. This was new information. In their Thursday mornings, they discussed dreams, but not abandoned ones. Start there, Amelia suggested. Bring your old drafting tools if you still have them. Show him how to draw blueprints. Make it about the skill, not the relationship. You're giving me a chance. I'm giving Arlo a chance to get to know his father. Whether that becomes a gift or a burden depends entirely on you. William stood, then hesitated. Can I ask, does he look like me? Your chin, your way of tilting his head when thinking, but his laugh is entirely his own. Bigger than either of us. I heard it yesterday, at the clinic. That's why you closed your eyes. It was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard, and the most painful, knowing I'd missed 8 years of it. Amelia stood too, establishing the meeting's end. Saturday, 10 a.m., the bookstore. Bring your drafting tools. I'll tell him you're someone I knew when I lived in the city, visiting town. We'll build from there. Should I use my real name? He's 8, not oblivious. He's seen you on television. Use your first name, let him make connections when he's ready. William nodded, started to leave, turned back. Amelia, Saturday, 10 a.m. Don't be late. She left him standing in the rain, returning to her car where she sat for 20 minutes, hands shaking. Hope felt dangerous after so many years of protective solitude. But she'd seen William's face when he heard Arlo laugh, raw recognition of what he'd lost, what he'd thrown away with his suspicion. That evening, she told Arlo they'd have a visitor Saturday. Someone who liked building things, who might teach him about blueprints. "Is he an engineer?" Arlo asked excitedly. "Something like that. He used to want to be an architect. What happened? He became something else instead. But I think he remembers how to build." Arlo accepted this explanation, already planning what projects to show this stranger. Amelia watched him sketch ideas in his notebook, unaware he was preparing to meet his father, that the circle she'd broken was beginning to close. Trust would rebuild slowly, plank by plank, sketch by sketch. Or it would collapse at the first weight-bearing moment. But Arlo deserved the chance to know his father, and William deserved the burden of proving himself worthy of that knowledge. The rain that had exposed their secret might also wash clean the ground for something new. Saturday morning arrived grey and mild. William stood outside the bookstore at 9:45, drafting tools in a leather case that hadn't been opened since law school. Through the window, he watched Amelia arrange displays while Arlo organized books. By color instead of alphabet, a system that made no sense but delighted him. The bell chimed his entrance. Arlo looked up from his rainbow of spines, assessing this stranger. With the direct gaze children perfected before learning politeness. "You're the builder," Arlo stated. "I used to be. Now I'm trying to remember how. Mom says you know about blueprints. Want to see?" The next hour dissolved into graph paper and mechanical pencils. William, teaching Arlo about scale and proportion, while Amelia handled customers. Father and son bent over the same table, heads tilted at identical angles, creating floor plans for impossible treehouses. Neither noticed her photographing them with her phone. The first image of them together, dated and filed where Arlo might find it someday. "You draw really straight lines," Arlo observed. "Moms are always wobbly." "Different skills," William said carefully. "Your mom builds other things. Important things." "Like what?" "Safe places, good lives, families." Arlo considered this. "That's harder than straight lines." Much harder. This became their Saturday routine. William would arrive with new challenges. How to design a bridge using only paper. How to calculate weight loads. How to sketch three-dimensional objects. On flat surfaces, Arlo absorbed everything, then immediately improved upon it with 8-year-old logic that ignored conventional limitations. 3 weeks in, William arrived to find Arlo at the kitchen table, permission slip in hand. "Field trip to the Science Museum," Arlo explained. "But Mom has to work because Mrs. Chen is sick and can't watch the store." "I could go," William offered carefully. "If your mom agrees. If the school allows it." Amelia paused in packing Arlo's lunch. They'd discussed this possibility. Public appearances, official forms, the careful fiction that William was an old family friend. "Please, Mom." Arlo's eagerness made the decision for her. The permission slip required an emergency contact. William wrote his name, paused at the relationship line, wrote family friend in letters that wanted to be something else. The field trip was chaos. 28 third graders investigating every exhibit simultaneously. William found himself designated group leader for 5 boys who wanted to build a rocket that actually works. He taught them about propulsion using straws and balloons, helped them construct paper helicopters, and listened to their elaborate theories about aliens with the seriousness they deserved. "Your friend's cool," one boy told Arlo. "My dad just tells me to Google stuff. He's not really my friend," Arlo said thoughtfully. "He's more like someone who should have always been around but wasn't, you know?" William, pretending not to overhear, felt the words lodge beneath his ribs. Small victories accumulated. Pancakes on Sunday mornings, William learning Arlo liked them silver dollar-sized, swimming in syrup. Apple slices cut horizontally so the seeds made a star. Arlo's preferred method that William adopted without question. The leaky bathroom sink that William fixed using 3 YouTube tutorials and vocabulary Arlo thankfully didn't catch. "You swore," Arlo said anyway. "That's $1 in the jar." Your mom has a swear jar? For guests. Family doesn't pay because mom says family gets to be human. The word hung between them. Family. William added $5 to the jar, advance payment for future humanity. Evening became their unexpected time. After dinner, after homework, William would sit on the porch with Amelia while Arlo built elaborate structures in the yard. These conversations started safely. Arlo's progress, schedule coordination, the mundane logistics of shared responsibility. He's exceptional, William said one evening, watching Arlo test weight distribution on a branch bridge. He's 8. They're all exceptional at 8. You know that's not what I mean. Amelia did know. Arlo's mind worked differently, faster, making connections that surprised his teachers. Like William, she didn't say. Like the man who graduated summa cum laude from Harvard before choosing politics over architecture. Why did you, she asked, choose law, then politics? You were building things. William stretched his legs, considering. My father called it playing with blocks. Said real men built empires, not buildings. I was 22, desperate for his approval. Did you get it? He died before my first election. Never saw me become what he wanted. Never saw me realize I'd climbed the wrong ladder entirely. But you kept climbing. Momentum. Expectations. Then I met you. The shift felt dangerous. They'd avoided discussing their past, focusing on Arlo, on the present, on careful cooperation. Those Thursday mornings, William continued. First time I felt like myself since college. Maybe before. Don't. I'm not asking for anything. Just acknowledging. What we had was real. What I destroyed was real. What we have now needs to be different. It is different. You hold all the power, as you should. A moth circled the porch light. Arlo called out measurements from the yard, calculating something only he understood. I think about it sometimes, Amelia admitted. What would have happened if you'd trusted me? If I'd told you about the pregnancy? If we'd been different people? We'd have failed differently. I was still married, still climbing that wrong ladder, still believing appearance mattered more than truth. And now? Now I'm learning to fix sinks and cut apple stars and be present for Saturday blueprints. It's the most honest I've been in 20 years. The moth found its way to brightness, batting against hot glass. Amelia stood to cup it gently, releasing it into the safer darkness. I'm seeing someone, she lied. A necessary boundary, though she hadn't dated since leaving Washington. William's expression shifted minutely. Not jealousy exactly, but recognition of doors closing. Good, you deserve that. Someone who trusts first, questions later, or don't question at all. That's dangerous too. Everything's dangerous. Just different kinds. 3 days later, William arrived with a bouquet, not roses or anything romantic. Wildflowers from the harbor trail, the kind Arlo collected for science projects. For the house, he clarified. Arlo mentioned you like the purple ones. Lupines. Right. Lupines. She arranged them in a mason jar, the gesture somehow more intimate than expensive flowers would have been. He'd walked the trail, selected each stem, carried them carefully. The effort showed in small scratches on his hands from thorns. Coffee? She offered. After Arlo goes to bed? Just coffee, she added quickly. To discuss his school conference next week. Just coffee, William agreed. But coffee became conversation and sitting closer on the couch than discussing school required. The lamplight softened years of distance. William's hand rested on the cushion between them, not reaching but available. Amelia found herself studying his profile, familiar but changed, weathered by choices and consequences. This is complicated, she said. Everything about us has been complicated. That's not a recommendation for more complications. No. But Arlo loves you. He's starting to trust me. Whatever we do or don't do, those facts remain. No castles, Amelia said suddenly. What? No fairy tale reconciliation. No grand gestures. No assuming that proximity means permission. If we're going to try something, it starts small. Coffee. Conversations. Maybe dinner eventually, but no castles, no curses. Just careful reality. I can be careful. I can do real things. Can you? Your entire career was performance. Was, past tense. Now I'm just William who fixes sinks badly and teaches blueprint basics and wants to earn what he threw away. A car drove past slowly, unusual for their quiet street at 10 p.m. William noticed Amelia tense. Security says there's been someone, he admitted. Photographer, probably freelance. Looking for the story. How long? A few days. Maybe a week. You didn't tell me. I hoped they'd give up. The story's gone cold. Senator resigns, admits affair, disappears. Without photos of Arlo, there's nothing new to sell. But they're still watching. Yes. Amelia moved to the window, peering through curtains. The street looked empty, but that meant nothing. Telephoto lenses could capture intimacy from blocks away. This is what I was protecting him from, she said. This surveillance. This reduces to headlines. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry. Don't stop cameras. William joined her at the window, careful not to touch. My security team can increase presence. Make it clear the story's protected. Men with earpieces at the playground. That's not the childhood I want for him. Then what? You want me to leave? I will. If that keeps him safe, I'll go. She heard the cost in his voice. Leaving now would break something in him that was just beginning to mend. But staying meant accepting visibility, managing exposure, teaching Arlo to live with watchers. Not yet, she decided. We deal with what comes, but if it threatens him, I'll go. No arguments, no legal battles. I'll just go. The promise settled between them. Outside, nothing moved. But somewhere, a camera waited, patient as rain, ready to capture the moment. Private became public, when careful reconstruction met careless exposure. Arlo called from upstairs, a bad dream needing comfort. Amelia went to him, leaving William alone with the weight of bringing danger to their door. He washed coffee cups, turned off lights, and locked the door behind him. Small acts of domestic care that felt like practice for a life he wanted, but might never deserve. Walking to his car, he felt eyes tracking him. The photographer was good, invisible but present. William didn't look for the lens. Instead, he drove away carefully, normally, protecting the fiction that he was just a family friend helping out. But fiction was wearing thin. Soon someone would connect dots, identify faces, craft narratives from telephoto truth. The small ways back, pancakes and permission slips, blueprints and bouquets, would meet the large cost of public recognition. The storm was coming, not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it arrived, their carefully rebuilt trust would face its first real test. The photos appeared online at 4:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Amelia's phone erupted with notifications, while darkness still pressed against her windows. She grabbed it instinctively, thumbs swiping through alerts that multiplied faster than she could read them. The first image showed William and Arlo at the Science Museum, heads bent over a paper rocket. The photographer had captured them mid-laugh, their matching profiles unmistakable. The second showed the three of them leaving the bookstore, Arlo between them, swinging from their hands. A third, William on her porch, holding wildflowers, expressions soft in a way the public had never seen. The headline on Celebrity Insider read, "Former Senator's Secret Child, Macbeth's Hidden Family Revealed." By 5 a.m., every major news outlet had picked it up. By 6, Arlo's name was trending alongside speculation, accusations, and 1,000 voices, debating whether this proved Macbeth's moral bankruptcy or humanized his earlier confession. Amelia sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through commentary that dissected her life with surgical precision. Theories about when the affair started, calculations about Arlo's age against Macbeth's marriage timeline, amateur. Investigators posting her bookstore's address. Old photos from her Washington days resurfaced and analyzed. Tech billionaire's secret child had morphed to love child scandal deepens by the time sunrise turned her kitchen golden. Tech Billionaire was a new fiction. Someone had confused William's brief consulting work with actual wealth. The narrative was writing itself without concern for accuracy. Her phone rang. William, probably seeing the same coverage. "Don't come here," she said, instead of greeting. "There are already people outside the store." "I'm sorry." "God, Amelia, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Let me make a statement. Clarify the timeline. Protect Arlo." More statements? That's what started this. Through her window, she could see vehicles parking, journalists setting up equipment, neighbors standing in clusters pointing at her building. The quiet life she'd built was evaporating in real time. "What do you need?" William's voice cracked slightly. "Tell me what you need. I need the past 8 years back. I need my son to wake up to normal instead of cameras. I need—" Footsteps on the stairs. Arlo appeared in his pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Why are there people outside?" Amelia lowered the phone. "Go back to bed, honey. It's still early, but there are trucks, big cameras, like on TV. I know, it's complicated. I'll explain after breakfast." Arlo moved to the window, pressing his face against the glass. Someone below pointed, and 3 cameras swiveled toward him. Amelia pulled him back quickly, drawing curtains. "Am I in trouble?" "No, never. You did nothing wrong." "Then why?" "Because sometimes grown-ups make things complicated, and kids get caught in it. But you're safe. I promise you're safe." She raised the phone again. "He's awake. He's confused. I need to tell him. I'll come." "William, he deserves to hear it from both of us. However you want to tell him, whatever words you choose, but he shouldn't. I'd wonder why his mother is crying alone while strangers camp outside." Rain began. Of course it did. Rain marked every crisis in their story, as if weather itself wanted to underscore their drama. William arrived 40 minutes later, somehow navigating through the growing crowd without stopping for questions. His security team created a brief corridor that closed immediately after he entered. The bell's chime felt absurdly normal against the chaos. Upstairs, Arlo sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, still in pajamas, watching rain streak the windows. He looked small suddenly, younger than his 8 years. William shed his wet coat, sat across from Arlo at the tiny table where a green crayon had rolled near the salt shaker from last night's homework. "You know who I am," William began. "Not a question. You're the man from TV, the senator who quit." "Yes, but I'm someone who knew your mom a long time ago. Before you were born." Arlo looked between them, calculations happening behind his eyes. "How long before?" 9 years. We worked together. We were friends, close friends. And then you weren't?" William glanced at Amelia, who nodded permission to continue. "We had a disagreement. I did something wrong. Didn't trust your mom when I should have. She left, and I didn't know where she'd gone. Didn't know about you. But you now." "Yes." Arlo stirred his cereal, soggy loops circling. "Is that why people are outside?" "Because you know about me now." "Partly. Some people think it's interesting when someone like me, someone who used to be in politics, has parts of their life they kept private. Are you my dad?" The question landed cleanly, without drama. 8-year-old directness cutting through adult circumlocution. William's throat worked. "Yes. Why didn't you say so? All those Saturdays, you were teaching me blueprints but not saying. Because your mom and I agreed to go slowly, to let you get to know me first, without pressure. So you could decide what you wanted. Did you not want me? I didn't know about you. If I had, I would have—" William stopped, started over. "I made a lot of mistakes. Hurt your mom, built a life based on pretending. But not wanting you was never the problem. Not knowing you existed was—" Arlo absorbed this, resumed eating. The adults waited, navigating silence. "So now everyone knows." "Yes. And they'll want to take pictures, ask questions." "Probably. That's annoying." Despite everything, Amelia almost laughed. Annoying. Her brilliant boy reduced the media frenzy to mild inconvenience. "Very annoying," William agreed. "Which is why we need to make a plan. Your mom and I need to tell everyone the truth, the whole story, so they stop guessing and making things up." "What's the truth?" That I met your mom 9 years ago. That I was married to someone else, which was wrong of me. That when we stopped seeing each other, I didn't know your mom was pregnant. That she raised you alone and did an incredible job. That I found out about you recently and have been trying to get to know you. That this is our private family situation that we're handling carefully. Arlo considered. Will you keep coming on Saturdays? If you want me to. Yeah. I like blueprints. Me too. Okay then. Arlo returned to his cereal, as if the conversation was complete. But Amelia knew this was just the first wave. Questions would come later, anger probably, confusion definitely. For now, 8-year-old resilience was protecting him. After Arlo went to dress, William and Amelia sat at that same small table. We need a statement, William said. Something that controls the narrative before it controls us. No spin, no optics, just the truth. Agreed. They wrote it together on notebook paper, crossing out and revising, arguing over words that mattered and phrases that didn't. An hour later, they had something honest and simple. 9 years ago, William Macbeth and Amelia Jacobs had a brief relationship that ended when William failed to trust her. Amelia left Washington, not knowing she was pregnant. She raised their son Arlo alone, building a life in Maple Harbor, focused on giving him a stable, loving childhood. William learned of Arlo's existence recently and has been working to establish a relationship with him, with Amelia's permission and at Arlo's pace. They are navigating this situation as co-parents who share one priority, Arlo's well-being and privacy. They ask that the media respect their son's right to a normal childhood. It's not sexy, Amelia said. It's true. Your old communications director would hate it. My old communications director helped destroy 3 marriages and 2 careers with sexy statements. Truth is better. The rain intensified, hammering the roof. Outside, the crowd had grown despite the weather. William's phone showed 53 missed calls. I should do this on camera, he said. If I'm going to face backlash, let it hit me, not you. Do we do it together or not at all? Amelia, you don't get to be the martyr. This is our story, our son, our statement, together. They set up a simple video. William's phone propped on books, the kitchen table as backdrop, both of them in frame. No makeup, no professional lighting, no polish, just 2 people addressing a camera. William read the statement in his regular voice. No political cadence. When he finished, he added one unscripted sentence. I've spent 20 years performing for cameras. This is the first time I'm asking them to see me as I actually am, a man who made terrible choices, who's trying to do better, who doesn't deserve forgiveness, but is grateful for the chance to try earning it. They posted it to William's official social media accounts at 2 p.m. Within minutes, the response was divided sharply. Half the comments praised his honesty, appreciated the simplicity, and respected the focus on Arlo. The other half accused him of everything from calculated manipulation to destroying family values to perpetuating affairs. Backlash was always coming, William said, reading through responses. At least now it's based on truth. But some grace arrived too. A comment from a single mother. You did what you had to do to protect your child. That's not a scandal, that's survival. A message from a family therapist. Children need time to adjust. You're doing this right. Even Victoria, his ex-wife, issued a statement supporting Amelia's right to privacy and wishing Arlo well. By evening, major outlets had shifted tone. The story became less about scandal and more about modern families, CO parenting, second chances. Not perfect, but better than the morning's feeding frenzy. 3 days later, the Harborview Pediatric Respiratory Clinic held their annual fundraiser. William had been invited before the scandal. The clinic had sent invitations to major potential donors months prior. Amelia assumed he'd cancel, avoiding public appearance while controversy simmered. Instead, he arrived exactly on time, dressed simply, no entourage. When the event coordinator rushed to seat him at the head table, he declined. I'd prefer to serve, he said. Kitchen, coat check, whatever helps. He spent the evening doing dishes, refilling water pitchers and clearing tables. When the director asked him to say a few words, he kept them brief. I'm grateful to this clinic for keeping my son healthy. I'm grateful to the staff who've treated him with expertise and kindness. My contribution tonight isn't about recognition. It's about ensuring other families have access to the same quality care. Thank you for the work you do." He donated significantly, but didn't announce the amount. The clinic director mentioned it later, enough to fund 3 years of reduced-fee services for low-income families. Watching him work without seeking credit, Amelia felt something shift. This wasn't a performance. This was William learning to be useful rather than important. Later that week, they met with a lawyer about establishing official custody arrangements. The attorney expected negotiation, potential conflict. Instead, William came with a single request. "Whatever Amelia wants, I'll sign whatever she's comfortable with. My goal is consistency for Arlo, not control." They agreed on joint legal custody, with Amelia maintaining primary physical custody. William would have scheduled time, weekends, holidays split fairly, summer weeks. But the agreement included flexibility for Arlo's preferences, his activities, and his comfort level. "Most parents fight over this for months," the lawyer said, bemused. "We're not most parents," Amelia replied. "We've already wasted 9 years. We're done wasting time." Walking to their cars afterward, William stopped. "I want to start something," he said. "A foundation, maybe. For single parents trying to build new lives. Help with relocation costs, job training, childcare. Called it Aurora House, New Beginnings." "You don't need my permission for that. I need your guidance. You did it alone. You know what actually helps versus what sounds good on paper. Why Aurora?" Arlo suggested it. Said, "Aurora means dawn light. New days are starting." She smiled, despite herself. He would say that, "Will you help me build it right, not as a board member or figurehead, as someone who knows the work?" Amelia looked at him, really looked. The man who'd asked for proof had become someone offering trust. The senator who'd built castles of image had learned to construct honest foundations. "No optics," she said. "No optics. And if Arlo needs you home instead of at a fundraiser, I'm home, every time. No exceptions. Then yes, let's build something real." The storm had come. They'd survived it. Not unscathed. Arlo would have questions for years. Therapy probably complicated. Feelings about having a father who'd been absent then suddenly present. But they'd faced it together, chosen truth over spin, prioritized their son over their image. Rain fell again as they stood in the parking lot, because apparently their story required constant precipitation. But this time, neither of them ran for cover. They just let it fall, washing away what needed washing, watering what might grow. 6 months after the storm, under a sky so wide it seemed to hold all. Possibility, Arlo asked the question Amelia had been waiting for. They sat on the harbor's edge, feet dangling over water that reflected clouds in perfect mirror. Arlo threw stones, counting skips, while William worked inside the bookstore reorganizing the history section, a task he'd volunteered for, the kind of quiet labor that had become his language of presence. "Why didn't you tell him right away?" Arlo's voice carried no accusation, just curiosity. "When you knew about me. Why wait so long?" Amelia chose her words carefully, aware this answer would shape how he understood his origin story. "I was afraid," she said simply. "Your father had already shown me he didn't trust me. I thought if I told him about you, he'd think I was trying to trap him, use you to get money or attention. I thought he'd try to take you away, or worse, ignore you completely. So I chose silence to keep you safe. But it wasn't just his choice, it was mine too, to have a dad or not." The observation hit precisely. At 8.5, Arlo saw what she'd rationalized for years. Her protection had also been control. "You're right. I made that decision for you. I thought I was being brave, but part of it was pride, not wanting to be rejected again, not wanting to risk him hurting you the way he'd hurt me. Do you think he would have hurt me? Honestly, I don't know. The William I knew then might have, the one who asked for receipts before believing me. But I'll never know what he would have chosen because I never gave him the chance." Arlo threw another stone, 5 skips before it sank. "I think you were both scared, just different kinds." That's wise. Not really. I heard you and William talking last week about how fear makes people do weird things. So he'd been listening. Of course he had. Children always listened when adults thought they weren't. Are you angry? Amelia asked. That you didn't know him sooner? Sometimes. But then I think about if you'd stayed in Washington, if he'd been around but not really around, like half there, that would have been worse. How so? Because now when he shows up, he actually shows up. He's not on his phone during blueprints. He doesn't cancel important meetings. When he's here, he's all the way here. Amelia pulled him close, this boy who understood presence better than most adults. You're right. That matters more than time. Quality over quantity. Miss Patterson says that about homework. Arlo grinned. But yeah, I'd rather have William now, all the way, than some ghost version of a dad who was busy being important. They sat in comfortable silence, watching boats navigate the harbor. This was healing, not dramatic revelation but quiet acknowledgement, questions asked and answered without performance. That evening, after Arlo was asleep, Amelia sat on the porch with tea, while William finished the dishes. Another ritual he'd adopted, small domestic participation that said, I belong here in ways words couldn't. He joined her, drying his hands on a towel, settling into the chair that had become his over months of evening conversations. Arlo asked why I waited to tell you about him, Amelia said. What did you answer? The truth. That I was scared. That I let fear override his right to know his father. William was quiet, absorbing this. Crickets filled the silence, their rhythm steady and sure. I've been thinking, he began, then stopped, started again. About permanence. About making this official. Amelia's pulse quickened. Official how? Marry me. No build-up, no romantic staging. Just the question, honest and direct. William, I know it's complicated. I know we're still rebuilding. I know Arlo might not be ready for that kind of change. But I also know I want to wake up here, in this house, with you and him. I want to be not just his father, but your partner, really partner, not just co-parent. This isn't about legitimizing him, is it? Making him legal somehow? God, no. Arlo is completely legitimate exactly as he is. This is about me wanting to build a life with you, the life we should have built 9 years ago if I hadn't been an idiot. Amelia watched moths circle the porch light, their persistence both beautiful and futile. No audience, she said finally. What? If I say yes, and I'm not saying yes yet, but if I do, we do it quietly. No press release, no photos, no turning our wedding into content. Just us, Arlo, maybe a few friends. Something real, not performed. I wouldn't want it any other way. And you're sure? Not because you think you owe me, or because it looks good for Aurora House fundraising, or because... William crossed to her chair, knelt so they were eye level. I'm sure because you make me better. Because I love how you cut apple stars and run a bookstore that barely breaks even because you care more about community than profit. Because you raised an extraordinary human while I was performing for cameras. Because you trusted me again when you had every reason not to. I'm sure because home stopped being a place and became wherever you and Arlo are. Amelia felt tears threaten. That's a good answer. So? Yes, but we tell Arlo first, together, and if he's not ready, then we wait. His comfort matters more than my timeline. Okay then. Yes. William kissed her. Not their first since rebuilding began, but the first that felt like beginning rather than rekindling. The porch light buzzed. Crickets sang. Inside, Arlo slept peacefully, unaware his family was reshaping itself again. They told him the next morning over pancakes. William made them now, having perfected the silver dollar technique Arlo preferred. So, you'd move in? Arlo asked, processing, like all the way. Your stuff here? If that's okay with you? Arlo considered, drowning his pancakes in syrup. Would you still do Saturday blueprints? Every Saturday, and you wouldn't leave if things got hard? The question revealed the real fear, not change, but abandonment. I'm not leaving, even when things get hard, especially when things get hard. What do I call you? If you marry Mom, are you still William? Whatever you're comfortable with. William works. Dad works if you want. No pressure either way. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. Arlo nodded, resumed eating. Then, casually, this is kind of like a level-up family. Started with just me and Mom. Added you, now upgrading to official status. Exactly like that, Amelia agreed, hiding her smile. Cool. Can I tell Marcus? He's been asking when William's going to make an honest woman of you. I didn't know what that meant, but it sounds like this. They married 6 weeks later at Town Hall, with Marcus and Eleanor as witnesses, and Arlo as ring-bearer. Amelia wore a simple blue dress. William wore the same sweater from their first reconciliation conversation. Arlo wore his favorite shirt with planets on it and carried the rings in a box. He'd engineered himself, complete with velvet lining and magnetic closure. The ceremony took 8 minutes. The celebration afterward at Juniper and Rye lasted hours. Half the town showed up uninvited, but welcomed, bringing food and flowers and the kind of genuine joy that couldn't be staged. You did it quietly, Marcus observed, refilling coffee. No cameras, no announcement, just did it. Only way that felt honest, William replied. That night, in the house that now legally belonged to all 3 of them, they gathered. For what Arlo called family meeting, his new tradition for discussing important things. What did we learn? Arlo asked, notebook ready. He'd started documenting life lessons after his teacher assigned a reflection project. It had become his way of processing. Trust is listening first, questioning second, William offered. Arlo wrote it down. What else? Pride can look like caution, Amelia said. Sometimes we tell ourselves we're being careful when really we're just scared. Money fixes some things and messes up others, William added. Aurora House helps because it gives people resources without judgment. But money couldn't fix what I broke with your mom. Only time and consistency did that. Apologies are verbs, Amelia continued. Not things you say, things you do. Every day. In small ways. Community holds you, Arlo contributed. Marcus and Eleanor and everyone, they didn't judge us. They just helped. Love is practice, William said quietly. Not feeling, not declaration. Daily practice. Showing up. Fixing sinks. Cutting apples right. Being present even when it's boring. Arlo finished writing, closed his notebook. Good meeting. Can we have ice cream now? They had ice cream. Rocky Road for Arlo, vanilla for Amelia, chocolate for William, individual preferences that somehow worked together. The house settled around them, its old frame creaking in familiar patterns. Outside, harbour water lapped against pylons. The world continued its rotation. This was a resolution, not perfect, not dramatic. Just 3 people choosing each other daily, building trust in increments. Learning that home wasn't a place you found, but a thing you made through repeated acts of showing up. The tilted house with its uneven floors and drafty windows seemed to listen, absorbing. Their conversation, like it, had absorbed decades of other families' stories. Night held them easy, without judgment, without cameras, without anything more complicated than being together. In the morning, William would make pancakes. Amelia would open the bookstore. Arlo would build something new from branches and imagination. They would practice being a family, one ordinary day at a time, until ordinary became extraordinary through sheer consistency. The headlines had ended. The story hadn't. It never would, because the real story wasn't scandal or redemption or any narrative outsiders might impose. It was just this, 2 people who'd failed each other learning to try again, raising a boy who taught them both about resilience, building a life that prioritized presence over performance. Some nights, Amelia still thought about that Georgetown kitchen, the coffee growing cold, the maps they'd never follow. But those Thursday mornings had been fiction, beautiful but unsustainable. This was real, messy and complicated, and requiring daily maintenance, but real. And real, she'd learned, was infinitely better than perfect. The headlines ended. The practice of love didn't. After the cameras left, after the statement was made and the scandal cooled, what remained was the daily choice to show up. to make pancakes the right size, to ask questions instead of assuming answers, to build trust in such small increments it barely registered until you looked back and realized how far you'd come. What does dignity look like where you live? Not in grand gestures or public declarations, but in quiet consistency, in choosing presence over performance, in admitting mistakes and doing the slow work of repair. Every victory here cost something ordinary and precious. Privacy, anonymity, the comfortable fiction that kept life simple. Amelia gave up her carefully constructed safety. William abandoned the identity he'd spent decades building. Arlo surrendered the uncomplicated narrative of his origin. All of them traded comfort for truth. Did he earn the yes? Did William's months of showing up, fixing sinks, learning to be present justify Amelia's decision to marry him? Or should she have maintained boundaries, kept him at arm's length, protected herself and Arlo from the risk of believing he'd really changed? Leave your verdict in the comments. Tell us if you'd have made the same choice, or if you think love requires more proof than time provides. And subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories for the next true fiction twist, where real lives meet storytelling, where ordinary people navigate extraordinary circumstances, where the ending is never quite what you expect, because this is where stories live, not in perfect resolution, but in the messy middle of people trying their best, failing sometimes, succeeding occasionally, always choosing to try again tomorrow.